This is how hard times begins. Now, that's the first word of the book. Now, what I want is facts. Teach these boys and girls nothing but facts. Facts alone are wanted in life. Plant nothing else and root out everything else. You can only form the minds of reasoning animals upon facts. Nothing else will ever be of service to them. This is the principle on which I bring up my own children, and this is the principle on which I bring up these children. Stick to facts, sir. The speaker and the schoolmaster and the third grown person present all backed up a little, swept with their eyes the inclined plane of little vessels. Oh, wait. Inclined plane of little vessels, then and there arranged in order, ready to have the imperial gallons of fact poured into them until they were full to the brim. That was what my English teacher, that is how we began high school English, with a vision of education as children were vessels in line waiting to be filled with facts, to have facts poured into them, a utilitarian vision of facts. So if you close your eyes for a moment and think about what was a transformative moment of learning for you, just do that for a second. Just think. We're not going to share out loud, but just think for a second. What was it? What has been a transformative moment of learning for you?
Oh.
I want to take a guess, or I pray to the dear Lord that a vision of you as vessels that needed to have facts poured into was not the experience.
Right.
Right? The sage on the stage idea, thank God we've moved away from that, of people like doing exactly what I'm doing now, which is like just sitting in front of a room and just sprouting things out. But, you know, it's only for a short amount of time. The guide on the side, right? Thinking about, at JCDS, our motto, one of our mottos was, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled, right? What a tikkun, what a beautiful correction for what came before. So with this idea that people are not just vessels to be filled, I started thinking about education in the Torah. Now, I will say I have in my life spent a lot of time on Parshat Breshit, on the beginning portion of Genesis, because I wrote my dissertation on it. But I hadn't thought about it quite in the way that I want to talk to you about. But before we even go to that, I want to share with you. I'm gonna try again to share my screen with the moments that Moses sees the burning bush, which is Exodus chapter 3. That's the moment he sees the burning bush. Oh, it's working now, Baruch Hashem. Okay, so this is the moment. Now Moshe, attending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, drove the flock into the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. A messenger of Adonai appeared to him in a blazing fire. This is from Sefaria, by the way. It's their translation. He gazed, and there was a bush all aflame, yet the bush was not consumed. Moshe said, I must turn aside to look at this marvelous sight. Why doesn't the bush burn up? When Adonai saw that Moshe had turned aside to look, God called out to him, Moses, Moses. He answered, Hineni, here I am. So in this moment, I would say this was a moment of education. Why? Because here there is profound curiosity, which I think is essential for education, right? We have a student, we don't think about Moshe necessarily as a student, but remember here he doesn't know a lot. We have Moshe as a student being curious about the world around him. What is going on here? That curiosity is noticed by the teacher, that would be God, the teacher God, noticed and then rewarded. right? Which begins a whole long transformative experience. Moshe goes through the experience individually of learning about God, of God doing signs and wonders, of the people of God, of Moshe not being sure what to do, of God giving him confidence, and then of Moshe going to meet Pharaoh. These are the steps that really are going to happen for the people. Moshe goes through his own transformation here, that the people are then going to have to go through themselves to become God's people. So curiosity, learning, transformation. Before I ask for questions, I want to share with you, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who those of you who know me know that he's my guy, wrote this: our goal should be to live life in radical amazement, to get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. Now, he really is my guy. I started reading him when I was 16. My life was transformed in that moment. But here's what I want to say. I don't actually think we can do it in every moment. I don't think we can be so amazed at every moment. But I do think that we can cultivate that capacity, that we can build the capacity to be curious and to notice and to be open to a world. And so what I want to do actually is now go to Parshat Bereshit with this idea of curiosity, with this idea of learning and transformation being possible. And I want to look at actually not the Genesis 1, but Genesis chapter 3, the story of Eve. And while we're doing that, I want you to each put in the chat, what is the first word that comes to you when I say Eve? What do you think of? It can be more than one word, but into the chat, what do you think? Framed. Far-fetched. Curiosity. Disrupt. So I hope you're all looking at the chat and seeing temptress, rebellion, independent, adventurous woman. Fascinating. So if we had more time tonight, I really, which is truthfully my preferred way of teaching, is to have you all share a little bit about what you're thinking and why. But because our time is so limited, I wanted to offer a couple of possible interpretations for this text. Now, I will say, most of you, Marilyn's framed, so interesting. Aviva Temptress, I would love to know more. Milton wrote a whole book, Paradise Lost. There is so much Christian interpretation about this text being the fall, the original sin, right? I would say that's why the Archbishop of Canterbury in the 16th century put in the chapter divisions where he did, because he wanted this story to be the focus. Because he was a Christian, he wanted this story to be the focus of study. And Christian interpretation for a long time has interpreted this moment as everything gets ruined for life, and we're all trying to get back there. But just over Sukkot, and this is the risky part because I've never taught it this way before, because I really just learned it myself in preparation for tonight, is I started doing some research on Eve. Because I felt like she has gotten a bad rap for basically millennia. And I found some fascinating, cool stuff of interpretation that I wanted to share with you. Anybody up for that? All right, here we go. So first, let's go to the text itself. Well, let me just actually pause for 1 second to say, are there any burning questions right now before we go to Eve? All right, no questions. Not sure how to interpret that, but we'll move on. So here we are. Okay, so Eve, I'm just setting the scene now. The two of them are naked, but they felt no shame. Now, the smartest animal in the whole world, the snake, says, don't you want to eat of this thing? The woman replies, we can eat of everything, but except this one tree. Because God said, it is only about the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, you shall not eat of it or touch it, lest you die. And the serpent says to the woman, don't worry about it. You're not going to die. No sweat. God knows that as soon as you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like divine beings who know good and bad. Now look at this pasuk. This is the thing about turn it, like read it 1,000 times, because I have read this text, maybe not 1,000, but 998 times, and here's 999 tonight. And I didn't think about it through the lens of education as transformation, as learning and knowledge. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating and a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable as a source of wisdom, she took its fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband, and he ate. Right? Now, it's true that then it says, then the eyes of both of them were opened. Right? Which easily could be an idiomatic expression for they gained knowledge, they gained insight. And they perceived that they were naked. They sewed them together fig leaves and made themselves loincloths. Look at that. There's a problem. They've acquired this knowledge. This knowledge have led to this issue, but now they have knowledge. So they have the capacity to actually solve their problem. Their eyes have been opened. And when I was doing research on this, I was thinking about, there's no way to get away from the fact that there's disobedience. There is disobedience here, right? Anybody want to argue for the fact there isn't? That God said something and then I'm so uncomfortable just talking and not having anybody talk back. But so we know that's a characteristic of the story, but I don't think it should overshadow. Oh, yes, Annette.
I'm going to say that in our culture, we act like disobedience is a bad thing, but I think that's a value judgment that's not necessarily appropriate, because disobedience can raise a lot of important issues, and sometimes it's an okay thing.
Yeah, and sometimes
it's a necessary thing.
Yeah, and now,
I'm thinking about current times.
And now that I have a teenager living at home, I'm learning that sometimes you have to assert your own independence, and if you are disobedient about the right things, it's okay, because you're learning how to be you. Lev.
Hi. It seems to me that maybe Eve isn't being disobedient, but rather she has reinterpreted the original instruction, and so she's taking it in a different direction.
Ah, interesting. She's taking it in a different direction and gaining something very important, right? When she's taking in that different direction, she's making an affirmative choice, right? And isn't that what we want to do? Isn't that what we want our students and our children to do in the process of learning? Because when she makes this affirmative choice, she is transformed, and humanity after her is transformed. And it's really interesting, because though it's long been interpreted as like this is a sin, there's actually no reference to sin at all in this text. And nowhere in the rest of Torah, never mind Torah, nowhere in the rest of Tanakh, when the people sin in the Hebrew Bible, when the people sin individually, when they sin collectively, this text is never referred to as sin. So yes, they are sent out. There is a consequence to their action, but it doesn't seem to me that they're actually being punished. Rather, it seems like an ideological tale, right? It's describing how did things come to be. We know women have pain in childbirth. Okay, how did that come to be? Okay, here's the story. We know that farmers have a hard time. Okay, that's the story. Now we know. So here's what's so fascinating to me is that if it's not about sin and punishment, what is this text about? Right? If we take it away out of that realm, what can we say this text is about? So here's what's so interesting, given some of the struggles that we have in modernity. The shoresh, the root achal, from like to eat and food, that word appears more than any other word in this text other than Adam. And so this text, I think, is making a claim on how important food security is to people who are living in ancient Israel, and how amazing it is that we have this ancient text with such modern resonance, that right from the beginning, food security was a core idea, a core importance to people, which makes sense because you need it for your survival. And this text, I'm just looking how much time, this text also, I believe, is part of, though it isn't frequently talked about like this, but I think it's really part of wisdom literature. Wisdom literature like Job, like Ecclesiastes, that in these books that really are trying to give you some wisdom about how to act in life when there's some harsh realities, this text is coming to do the same thing. And what do we have? We have, the wisdom tale has the wise agent, aka the snake, and the person who is conferring of the wisdom. The woman ultimately gets the wisdom, right? Their eyes are open. They are like divine beings now. They are transformed. Their being is transformed. That's why they have to leave the garden. And I want to say that, and this will be my closing thought, that in the other parts of the Tanakh, in other parts of the Hebrew Bible, women and wisdom are very closely connected. So if you look, for example, in the book of Mishlei, Perichet, in Proverbs chapter 8, it says, it is wisdom calling, understanding raising her voice. Throughout the book of Proverbs, for better and sometimes for worse, women are connected with wisdom. Women are the purveyors of wisdom. And so I think that all began in Parshat Breshit, at the very beginning of Torah. Rather than being a sin, this text is actually about wisdom. This text is about women seeing the opportunity to make a choice and open a whole new possibility for the human race. Education is transformation, the opening of eyes and what can happen. Whether you have the curiosity of Moshe or you have the courage of Eve to make a different choice. We have 2 minutes. I'll take questions, comments, thoughts. So wait, Susan, were you going to say something?
Well, I just wanted to say, when we think about the education as being transformative and innovative, and we think about creativity, we think about taking chances, we think about curiosity, we think about risk-taking. And as you were teaching this, I kept thinking about, the words they say, failing forward, right? So we have to be open to learning, gaining the wisdom, even if it didn't work out or it does work out, it doesn't really matter because we're still going forward.
Amen.
And gaining wisdom.
Amen.